And welcome back to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here with you, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz, Stephanie Burke, and John Brightman. Full house tonight. And, of course, we have a full house because we have a very special guest joining us on the line tonight. Really, the man needs no introduction. He is simply one word, amazing. Joining us on the line right now, we have the one, the only, the Amazing Kreskin. Sir, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, is this Tim Weisberg?
This is, yes.
Yeah, Tim, and you mentioned there's a couple of other folks with you on at the studio. What were the names?
We have two Matts, we have a John, and a Stephanie.
There's three of you or two of you, or what is it? You said Matt, John, and Stephanie.
We're how many? Hold on, 1, 2, 3. We're 5 total. So,
oh my God!
Yes.
God, you got a paying audience there right in the studio, huh?
Well, I need somebody to run out and get my snacks for me. Somebody to go and run and get some tacos. You know,
And the show, and you know what's great? The show is live, and I constantly say this, having spent so much of my life in television. It's so nice to know things that are going on that you can't turn around and change it, because so much of the live and the shows, real shows that are on TV, are not really real. And I get a kick out of the reality shows. I don't want to go into details, but there's one great incident that happened 2 years ago in a woman's clothing store, and the producers called me to the Kreskin. Do you think the public will ever find out that spontaneous incident took 9 takes in almost a half an hour to film, you know? So it's nice to know. And you guys seem fairly stable. I'm only joking, by the way. I kid about that, but I don't drink that heavy.
I'd say fairly is a generous take for how stable we are.
Yeah, you're out in near the Boston area, are you?
We are. We're just between Cape Cod and Rhode Island, and
wow.
And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, is because you're actually coming to our neck of the woods next week. You're going to be in Arlington.
Yeah, I'm doing a full evening concert. It'll be over 2 hours in Arlington at the Regent Theater, and I'm on the road most of the time. I just came in a few hours ago from Pennsylvania, and I leave then tomorrow morning for New York City. But so I'm looking forward to coming. I don't think I've been to Arlington before, at least not in this life. Now, I'm only joking, folks. People are going to say this guy really is drinking, but no, I love my work. It's just that the traveling, sometimes I have to look at my wristwatch to see where I am, you know?
Oh, understandable. Now, what can people...
In fact, I just have to. I won't say much about it. But I was in Bethlehem, Allentown, Pennsylvania today, and my career. I'm from New Jersey. My career started years and years ago in that area, and the memories I have of private shows and then public programs of a 12, 14, and 16-year-old, traveling through Pennsylvania. Just it was kind of a neat reminiscence. But and now the airline industry. I guess as the end of last year, they have estimated I've flown a little over 2.5 million miles.
Oh wow, that's a lot of peanuts.
Well, flying is. I got to tell you something, and I'm not complaining because I'm only home about 4 days a month. But flying is not quite the same as it once was. You got to make sure that if you are if you do have a height that's a little over 4.5 feet, that you're going to be able to fit in the seats that you bought tickets. I'm exaggerating now. I'm being sarcastic. And make sure when you check luggage through that you don't check yourself through, because you got to pay for every piece that you check through. And there's even one airline now that charges you for a glass of water on the flight. So it's a different world today.
It's I believe it's $2 for the water and then $3 to use the restroom after you drink the whole glass.
So I like your sense of humor. Now the other folks there, they seem very quiet. They are alert, and they also have a sense of humor. Am I correct?
They do. Yes, they do. They generally yield the floor to me because I'm very talkative. So
how long have you been doing the show?
Just about 12 years now.
Oh my! And is it a weekly or?
It is weekly. Yes, Saturday nights we come on and we talk about all things different and unique and strange and unusual. And so far,
how many hours do you do on Saturday night?
We do 2 hours.
That's great. That's great. I love radio, and that's radio's where things all started. I go back, and I won't go back, but I go back to a hero of mine that I only got to know the latter part of my his life, but and it's a legendary figure that has been forgotten today, and that was Arthur Godfrey.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you look back at some of the legends that have kind of opened the doors and led the way for us to do what we do here, and even to just be able to have a nice conversation with people, to speak with people one-on-one as opposed to having to put on a show on the radio.
Yeah, and I think only because he's been brought up lately to me since his shows are now being, I can't even believe this, but I guess it's now 4 months now, but Johnny Carson's TV shows are now being repeated on, I guess, one of the cable numbers, because I'm constantly called. I did 88 shows with Carson, and the reason I bring it up is because people have been reminding me that they've been seeing me lately on the Carson show now, and no, I'm not. I don't mean that we've had a seance or what have you, but the break was, talk about communications, what have you. A man before him, his name was Steve Allen,
mm-hmm.
and Steve Allen was one of the best humorists I ever knew in my life. He was a remarkable man and a good writer and what have you. But so he had heard about me, and this is some years ago, and I wasn't known outside of the East Coast at that time. So he had left the Tonight Show. Carson had taken over, and he went to I think California. He was doing a show late at night that college students were watching and what have you. So he heard about me. So he flies me out to L.A. and to the city. It was outside of L.A. and it's an hour show, nightly program. And they said to me, do you want to meet Steve before the show? I said, I love the spontaneity of his program. If it's all right with him, I'd just like to walk on for the first time and then get to know him. They said he would understand. He would get a kick out of that. So bottom line is this. So Steve Allen says he never met me or didn't know anything about me. He says, we're all interested in the mind and the potential of the mind. This young man is somewhat gifted. Would you welcome Kreskin? I didn't have the name Amazing then because that was given me years later by Carson. So I walk out on camera, and in those days, the lights in television were extremely bright and hot. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know any local shows here in New York and New Jersey. So I walk out, and I'm looking towards the camera as I'm walking towards Steve Allen, who's about 6'4" and standing on a dais, elevated, just like Letterman and all the others have done even since then. And I'm slowly getting blinded. As I get near Steve Allen, I get to the dais, trip over the dais, fall flat on my face. So help me God, fall flat on my face. Of course, my family thinks it's the highlight of my career. And Steve Allen says, are you all right, Chris? I said, fine, and no mocking me or anything wrong with the show. Well, a man came home early to his apartment in New York that night and saw that there was a mentalist on Steve Allen's show, and he watched, and it was Johnny Carson. And there he saw this whole incident, and 7 weeks later created a character called Karnak. And Karnak, the magnificent, if you remember, always fell over the desk when he walked out.
So that was like a little homage to you when he did that.
Well, the last show, that was kind of sad. I knew when I did the last show with him that the show wasn't going to be on not much longer, and I'd done a number of years. Now we're in L.A. doing the show, and I said, Johnny, you've been very good to me through the years, and I don't think I'll ever forget my first break on the program. And he says, oh, the mighty Karnak, huh, Kreskin? We can't really erase our past. So I just thought you'd get a kick out of that incident.
Oh, I love it. I was just having a conversation the other day about Carson with someone about his timing was impeccable. I don't think anybody's ever had the kind of timing he had.
It really, as a matter of fact, he had, a lot of people don't know this, but his greatest hero in his life was a man that most people would not know today who he was, but his name was Jack Benny.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch a Carson show where he's doing a monologue or some routine aside from sitting at the desk, and turn off the sound and think of Benny, you'll start seeing some of the motions, the mannerisms, the glances. He revered Jack Benny, and his wife said to me, the only the only two times she ever saw him sobbing was the night that Jack Benny had passed away because he admired him. But Carson was a brilliant, and they never repeated anything. Something goes wrong, you just run with the damn thing and make the most of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they didn't have time to edit then. They were filming at 5 and airing at 11, so you had to.
That's right. They were, and he was very. By the way, his passionate love of the whole show was his monologue, and he did not have guests in his dressing room, but one of the times I was there for something I was going to do with him that I wanted to condition his thinking, they allowed me to visit in his dressing room, and there he sat. It looked like a character from the mafia sitting in front of this small round table with this bare light bulb over the table, and what was on the table, his monologue. He was just passionate about his jokes and what have you.
That's a great insight into a great man. I do want to ask you though, because you do have the show coming up at the Regent Theater in Arlington. It's happening on October 6th, and you can get tickets at theregenttheater.com. What can people expect when they come to an Amazing Kreskin show?
Well, I know you folks that have seen me on television or go on YouTube and see there's over. They tell me now there's over 30 half hours of a television show I did a few years ago and what have you, but this is more than just a half hour or 22-minute television program. It's a full concert, and it's dealing with my audience, because whether it's a theater such as the Regent in Arlington, or it's a state fair and Minnesota State Fair, I had 10,000 people. The Oregon State Fair was 30,000, or a nightclub in Vegas or what have you. My audience, there's no wall. There's no wall between myself, Tim, and my audience, because the audience is part of my program, and I'll be reading their thoughts. I'll ask them to concentrate on different items in their lives, and I'll proceed to attempt to reveal what they're thinking about. I will have people coming up on stage in which I'll be doing rather dramatic mental tests with them, and not only reading their thoughts, but influencing their behavior. And then, and yes, I will. Of course, I will be doing it on next Friday. It's something I've done all over the world. It's been written about. It's been satirized and talked about, and that is my check test. And in that situation, Tim, I will gather from the audience and you folks attending. For all you know, you may be one of the people, because I will gather a half a dozen folks from the audience whom I've never met before. If that's the one condition, unless I'm doing a return engagement for a private company or organization, these are 5 or 6 strangers. I will turn over to 4 or 5 of them my check for the evening. And you heard me correctly, Tim. My check, a couple of them, they will stay on stage. A couple of them will then escort me from the theater while the committee will hold on to my check. And usually when I'm escorted, one of the security people at the theater will leave with me and the 2 witnesses, and we'll go out of the building unless the weather's bad. Then we'll go into a dressing room where I cannot see or hear what's going on. In Toronto last year, where my shows were outdoors at a state fair, and it was in 19 days. I did 29 shows, and because it was outdoors and the 1,000 or how many were in the audience were in front of me, they had a van parked next to the stage, and every time this test was enacted, I was taken into the van with a committee to guard me, and the doors were closed. I couldn't see what's happening, because the committee, when I'm out of the building, is to take my check and hide it anywhere in the entire theater auditorium, anywhere, long as it's accessible and no one's going to be in any danger where they've hidden it. So they can hide it in the audience, they can hide it on the stage. And sometimes there's hundreds and hundreds of possibilities. When they've hidden it, if you can imagine this piece of insanity, one of the committee members is instructed to come and get us where we are, and usually another security person in the theater will take them to wherever they know I am. It's outdoors. They go out and get me, and I'm brought back in. Now, the committee who's hidden my check don't talk to me. I don't ask them any questions. It's not a guessing game. They just have to focus on what they've done. I think this will be interesting to your listeners, Tim, because the understanding is if I don't find my fee, if I don't locate it, I forfeit the entire fee for my performance. It goes back to the company that booked me, and the show is for free. And you got to admit, Tim, that's a hell of a way to make a living.
It is, and it's a big risk. 'Cause have you ever not found your check, though?
Well, yes, I have. I could have told you late last year on 9 occasions. As of some months ago, it was 10 times I forfeited my fee. That's not many, though, Tim, out of 6,000, over 6,000 searches. By the way, one of the most famous failures has been written in papers in Europe and other parts of the world because it became such a rather dramatic story. It took place in New Zealand. Now, I love New Zealand. I've toured New Zealand a number of times, but this is my first time there. This is about 20-some years ago, and I was one of the nights, and one of the first couple of nights I was at a large theater in New Zealand, and it turns out that I failed. When the show was over, some of the press that was there that night to review the show came over to my dressing room and said, "Kreskin, we know you must be upset. Everybody, of course, was excited with your show, but we know how you must feel. You've lost your fee. Would you mind having a press conference tomorrow morning outside the theater early in the day?" And I said, I am upset, but I'm a professional. Of course I will do so. Well, the next morning, there were over 100 reporters there, TV and radio, and
wow.
and news people. It isn't because, Tim, I failed to find my fee. It's because when I failed the night before, I lost in one night $51,000.
Wow.
The money was turned over. Some of the money we turned over to a crippled children's hospital, which is nearby, and they named a wing after me. And every time I'm back in New Zealand, when I'm in the town, it happened, and I will go visit there and say, the night that I lost my fee, I could have used the hospital. But listen to the places, and this, I shouldn't tell you this. I shouldn't tell you, the listeners, this, but you can imagine. Well, the craziest situations are at universities. I've done over 1,000 college appearances in the States and in Canada, and some of the colleges like some of them I've been a dozen times through the years. And one show I did in the University of Illinois, it was in a gymnasium. There's about 8,000 people, 7,000 or 8,000 people, and I come back in the gymnasium, and the check is hidden. I'm walking through the place. It was hard to walk around because people were sitting not only on bleachers but on the tarp that was on folding chairs on the tarp that they had covered the main floor with. So the place was very crowded. And I come up, I stop in front of this elderly gentleman, distinguished looking man. I had him stand up, and I said to him, "Sir," I said, this sounds crazy. Would you open your mouth?" Well, I felt like a stupid jackass because there was no check, and I said, "Sir, I apologize." I walked away from him. I must have walked 20 or 30 feet, and I stopped, and I turned around, and something kept telling me mentally, I got to go back. And you could hear a pin drop in the place. In spite of the crowd, you could hear a pin drop. So I walked back. I come in front of the gentleman again, and I said, "Sir, if I embarrass you, you just sit right, I'm having you standing, and you just sit right back down, and things will end here. Would you open your mouth again?" He does. I said, "Sir, does this have anything to do with the roof of your mouth?" Tim, he reached in his mouth, he took out his upper plates, and he handed me my check.
Wow. Of all places.
Okay, so I'm opening my mouth. I'm saying open my mouth. That was not a very funny remark, but I'm giving people ideas because, as people will come. One man in outside of Philadelphia. I think it was Harrisburg or Philadelphia. A few years ago, I was at a theater for, I guess, a week or so, not one night. And he, when he wrote a review of the show, he says, I've reviewed plays. He said, but watching Kreskin do his check test is like watching a murder mystery, except that every night the solution is different in the play, because of course the solution to him is not my own decision, it's the decision of the group of people who are, creative in what they're doing.
Well, and it's important, I think, to let people know that with your shows, with your performances, it's not about having extraordinary powers. It's not about having psychic abilities.
It has to do, Tim, with first of all, I'm not a fortune teller. I've tried looking into a crystal ball. I get a headache. Now I don't, but I do feel under certain conditions. Let me give you. It's interesting you brought this up. This was brought up today when I was in an area where I had a large family of relatives in Bethlehem, Allentown, years ago, and they were asking me about my background and so forth. The way I can explain what I'm doing in a performance is I'll give you an incident that happened at the Riviera a couple of years ago in Vegas. One night, I mentioned two names, and this gentleman stood up, and he was also an older person. I said, "Sir, who are these people?" He said, Kreskin, he said, "They're not people." He said, "My wife and I are." He was from some other part of the country. I don't remember what word he said. He said, "But we're here vacationing here, and those are our pet dogs. We love them." I said, "Sir, can I ask you something? Did you say to your wife, I wonder if Kreskin can tell me my military number?" Tim, you would have had to be there. I wish that the show had been, someone had filmed at that moment. He's standing up, he slams his fist down on the small round table because it was a large nightclub audience. He says, "Kreskin," he says, "we're not staying at this, the Riviera, we're staying at," I'll figure where the hotel was. He said, "I said that to her at dinner." I said, "Well, who have you told your army?" He says, I haven't told anyone. I never mentioned it to my wife. You can ask anybody. If anyone calls in the service, man or woman, they'll say, come to think of it, I never mentioned it to my family, my wife, because we just don't mention something like that.
Yeah, right.
Well, I said, "You know it by heart?" He says, "Yes, I do." I gave him every single digit in his Army serial number, and he was in World War II. But, Tim, if he didn't know the number, you could have given me a crystal ball with a $10,000 under the ball, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. Well, maybe if you offered that, Tim, I would have done something desperately, but no, I couldn't have done it.
So it's
Tim, I got to say this. I hope, and if you can and decide to, let us know, because we'll make sure you can come as my guest with someone. If you can come to the program, let me know, because I'd love to get to see you and tell the audience, this is the person you've been hearing all these years on the air.
Well, that'd be great. I mean, that's what I find the most fascinating about this is you're not. It's not magic. It's just
no, it is not magic, Tim. It's dealing with the potential of the mind. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to say this to all you folks listening in. We're going to have, and because and I do this every year in the shows during the period in late October. Part of the show at Arlington and at the region is going to be a ghost sighting. Now, I'm not saying I necessarily believe in ghosts and what have you. I'm not knocking mediums and what have you, but this is not an illusion program. When you see what happens, you will understand why. When I did this a couple of years ago in New York City at a theater, and don't worry about it if you volunteer on stage amongst the 20 or 30 people I have up there. One lady got so frightened, Tim, she ran out of the theater and went 2 blocks down Broadway. The crew got her and brought her back and said, everything's all right. The whole scenario is gone. So, my comment is this, Tim. The whole program the audience is part of it. They're not sitting there watching something. In some way, they may be involved. And I think that's why my career, I've been very proud. It's been like an adventure. As I, a year ago, I was in Spain, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Wales, Netherlands, Canada, the United States, and a foreign country called New Jersey, where I live. It's the state of New Jersey.
I've been there, too. They always ask me for my paperwork when I try to get in.
Oh, they do, Tim. Oh, my God. I say this, if we can't laugh at ourselves and about something and today especially with being politically correct. I'm sitting in my office here. There's a sign, and reporters that come in here sometimes to interview me, a sign on a frame sign that says, "If anyone ever calls me politically correct, kick me in the ass," because we got to be able to laugh. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We got to be able to laugh at ourselves.
And it's funny that you mentioned not knocking psychics or mediums, because my co-host Stephanie is actually a psychic medium. So,
Stephanie, are you?
I am. Yes.
Isn't it? I hope to get to meet you. Have you made this a life's work? Your work as a medium?
It was actually something that I ran from for a very long time because I didn't want to be different. And I recently decided, after having my first TV national television debut on a television show last year, that I should just jump in full force and do it.
Were you interviewed on the show, or was it a piece about you that you're doing?
Nope, it was actually for a show. It was actually, my first one was Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi Channel, and then I went to Kindred Spirits on TLC. So they were both paranormal investigation shows that I was a part of.
But you felt there were indications that this was an area of special meaning or interest to you long before this. You went into it full time. Was it through your life or things that have happened? Is that what it is?
I actually was born with the gift, and my mother had it, my grandmother had it, and I absolutely loved it. I had a passion for it, but when I realized that I was different from everybody else, it made me feel really uncomfortable, and I didn't want to be judged for it. And it's hard to be the weird little kid that can see ghosts and make friends. So I tried my best to stay away, but I realized that there was so much more that I could do to help people that were grieving, that I decided that it was something that I was meant to do, and I was handed for a reason, and I wanted to be able to try to help people through their grief process. So, or people that were afraid to live in their homes because of paranormal activity.
That's very, very meaningful, and you've given your life meaning because you shared your ability to help others and give them, some consoling, also some hope, and also a different way of looking at things. I think that's exciting. We don't today, more and more, as you can understand, we're reaching a point in our culture where people are not really listening to each other as they once do. I happen to be an avid reader. I've written 20 books through the years, and I just added to my home an addition to my library, because my library is over 8,000 books. The BBC came to photograph it some years ago, because I'm interested in how other people think.
Me too.
And that's what life is. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what life is all about.
Agreed. I've always said I love to know what makes people tick. And I love to just have conversations with different people from all different walks of life, because I love to understand how they see the world.
And yes, and it's exciting to look at life through other people's perspective. I'll tell you something. When you get a full analysis, you got to explain it on the show, because if you can explain how Tim Weisberg thinks, I'm only kidding. What makes him that? Tim, are you still there?
I tell her all the time to stay out of my head, but she doesn't listen.
He gets really nervous when I read his mind. Very, very nervous.
She does. Kreskin, she sends me the answers to questions that I'm just about to send her in a text message. While I'm still typing the question, she sends me the answer.
Tim, now are the folks with you that are on tonight, are they on with you each week or off and on through the time that
for the most part, yeah. If we're all able to get together, this is the crew. But generally, somebody's here, somebody's there. But my other
tell me a little bit about the other folks that are with you.
Well, the person making everything happen, because we also video stream this at the same time on YouTube.
Oh.
So we have a producer here, Matt Costa, who is just a genius with everything. He just makes this show tick. We wouldn't have this show running if it wasn't for him. And then we have Matt Moniz, who just sits next to him and, watches. Matt Moniz is actually a chemist, and he is a chemist by trade, but he's also been investigating the paranormal, and in particular, especially UFOs and alien abductions. He's been investigating for a long time, and we actually just had on the show prior to you joining us, we had a local person who was abducted by aliens and had a tattoo from the aliens while he was up there. So, we're going to have him hook up with Matt Moniz, and Matt Moniz is going to help him out with all kinds of regression therapy and testing and things of that nature. And then in here we also have John Brightman, who's a friend of ours who came by tonight, and he is another guy that does all kinds of things. Started off as a paranormal researcher, now he's a talent agent.
Are you kidding me? He's a talent agent?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Isn't talk about a wide diversification of you've got an interesting crew of people there. I mean, and I'm not talking about it psychiatrically. I'm talking about
well, that too.
That too. But you're by the way, I'm going to in a little while have to get going. But we've got to talk again in the not too distant future, because the experiences through the years as I've traveled all over the world, some of them have been. That would be interesting. You folks who would understand have been wild and unexpected and unpredictable. I mean, if I can tell you things that happened in Japan, where I was performing with audiences that did not speak my language, but there was still a way of communicating. So, you've got an interesting chemistry there. I want to tell. And folks, by the way, the other four of you who are on with Tim, I want to tell you folks, and let's hope that Tim doesn't edit this out. The other reviews there. If you can work with Tim, you can handle ISIS, the Taliban. I'm only joking.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll definitely have you come back sometime when you have some more time in your schedule. We'll really get into some stuff. But for right now, we'll just remind everybody that if they want to come out and see you, they can do so this Friday in Arlington at the Regent Theater.
And Tim, and I will come back. I will come back on the air.
Thank you, sir.
with all of you folks there. But folks also understand that as long a program as it is, when I leave the stage and have a little bit of time to myself to change my clothes, what have you, there is a meet and greet after the program, because as I travel the world and meet people that known me from other areas or seen me in the past, I get a kick out of people that come with their youngsters that have seen me a few years ago. Now, it's not true that I was born in the 1880s. If you start that rumor, Tim, I'm going to haunt you. But I have been around for a while. And listen, I'll say I won't say goodbye now, because I'll see you. And Tim, if you do plan, call us at the office here during the week. And I want to. But if you do come, any of you folks that are there tonight, come and say hello after the program. I won't say goodbye to you folks. Just in the spirit of broadcasting, I'll say to be continued, okay?
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Take care now.
All right, you as well.
Bye.
That is the one, the only, the legend himself, the Amazing Kreskin. I told you guys it was going to be fun talking with him.
What a nice guy.
And
he's funny as hell.
He really is.
Yes.
And I listen, I had to be careful there, because I would fall down that rabbit hole of just having him tell me old showbiz stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hearing that stuff, hearing about like what it was like to meet Steve Allen and to work with Johnny Carson, and Kreskin's worked with everybody. And just those stories alone I could have listened to, even not even getting into, because I could have. And but if you actually want to go out and see him and see his abilities, the show is happening this Friday, October 6th at the Regent Theater. Listen, how much does it cost now to go out to the movies?
Oh, God, I don't even know.
I just went a couple weeks ago.
We should get John and Mike.
I just went a couple weeks ago, and 2 tickets to the movie with drinks at the movie was $47.
You can go see the Amazing Kreskin in person. Tickets start at $22.50. So for almost the same price you're going to pay to go sit in one of those cushy movie theaters with the reclining seats, you can go see the Amazing Kreskin live. The best seats in the house are $37.50. You pay more for that to watch a boxing pay-per-view.
I wish I was around so I could go. That would be awesome. Huh?
When is it?
It's Friday night. Friday, October 6th at the Regent Theater in Arlington. Tickets are still available. And also they have a few other deals as well that you can get involved. If you are a senior, you can save $5. If you're a veteran, you pay half price. And you can also get group discounts as well. So all of that is up on the regenttheater.com website. That's Regent Theater with an E at the end because it's fancy. So you have the E at the end of theater. So it's TRE. I'm sure if you look at the other one too, it'll be the same. But so you can go and check it out. Get tickets because you're going to want to see this. This is going to be one heck of a show. I'm going to try and get out because now I got personally invited by the Amazing Kreskin.
You did.
I have to get out of work that night and go.
I'm really sad I can't be your date.
That's going to be one heck of a night.
No, me.
No, not you.
Yeah, me.
I'm much cuter than you are.
Yeah, but if I go, then maybe Tim did the little plug for me that I'm an agent. Maybe
He was interested in the fact that you're an
See?
agent.
See?
Fine, I'll pay for my own damn ticket.
And he's been showing up at some of the paranormal conventions and
God.
stuff over the years. So, and that's what people have told me. People have been telling me, like, you have to talk to this guy. I said, I'd love to talk to this guy.
Right. I've heard a lot about him, and I'm happy that we actually got to get him on for a little while.
I mean, I remember seeing him on TV when I was a kid. I didn't want to make him feel old and dated, but I remember being a young kid sneaking downstairs watching Johnny Carson. I remember seeing him on some of these different television shows. Matt was running some clips on the video stream with
Yes.
David Letterman and seeing him do what he does, and always every time I would walk away kind of scratching my head and to know that there is no magic behind it. There is no special power to it is even more fascinating to me because I was telling you guys earlier, that's what when I put out that we were going to have the Amazing Kreskin on, people would be like, well, he doesn't really have powers, or it's not like real magic. I'm like, but that's way cooler to me,
right?
Because that means he's doing something that kind of everybody can do if they open up their mind enough.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm sorry if anybody from work is listening. I'm feeling sick. I can't go in for it tonight. I think I have to go to Arlington to get seen by a specialist.
I was gonna say, how are you gonna pull that off?
I have to get yeah.
I'm
having mental abilities. I have to see a mentalist. So
That's awesome.
I'm a mental breakdown. So I have to have a mentalist advise me. But that's why I just knew like this would be a great fit, not only for the stories that he can tell, but just because it fits into what we talk about here, but in a different way. And so what actually happened is I got an email to just buy tickets. Like, hey, you might be interested in the show. The Amazing Kreskin's coming to the Regent Theater. So we're going to try and talk to that guy. And so it happened to work out. Very smooth process. It was like it was meant to happen. So
I would have to say, since I've been listening to you guys now for 7 years, I would have to say that
where were you the first 5?
Oh, jeez. I don't even know.
And you want to be his date Friday night?
I would have to say he's probably in my top 3 or 4 of the best guests that you've had on here.
Oh, I would agree. And we've had some pretty good ones over the years.
Well, that's pretty much the general consensus right now in the chat room is everybody saying that this is radio gold, the best, short segment that they've heard.
It's tough being a host sometimes because you do just kind of want to sit back and listen. Sometimes I take myself out of the show and say I want to just kind of hear what's going on as a listener,
right?
And not have to remember to ask the questions. And that was certainly one of them. If you had told me at some point in my life, you will interview the Amazing Kreskin, you will interview Jim Mars, you will interview James Van Prague, these people that we've talked to over the years, John Zaffis, I would have been like, no way. But
it's awesome.
We've been lucky enough to do it. And
right.
and who else? We've had some pretty weird guests. We had Eddie Money on the show.
What?
Yeah, we had Eddie Money on the show.
Bunch of times.
Oh my God.
We had who else have we had on? We had the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, on the show. Matt and I were went on forever and it ended up not working out, but we were having numerous conversations to get him on the air, the founder of Atari, Nolan Bushnell, because there was a point in time when we said, you know what, it doesn't always have to be paranormal, let's just talk to people we want to talk to. And so we were going to have him on, and it just ended up not working out. But he called to tell us that he couldn't do the show and talk to us on the phone for an hour to tell us that he couldn't come on the show. But it was, it was one of those things that just didn't end up happening. But sometimes it's just meant to happen,
We have fun.
We're meant to hook people up like, Moniz and Jim Andre, and sometimes we're made to bring people together like we will with the Bridgewater Triangle show coming up on October 14th. So email us now if you want to get involved with that. And sometimes it's just a matter of you know, you look at the path that things go on and the way that people go, it's kind of all works out for people.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just keep riding that wave, and we're glad to take the audience along with us. And speaking of taking the audience places, did you guys? Let's do some paranormal TV plugs here. Did you guys have a chance to see the Fall River episode of Haunted Towns?
I did.
We haven't even talked. We haven't had a chance to talk about the Fall River episode of Kindred Spirits either. We haven't. On the air.
We have to have Amy and Adam back on too.
Absolutely. I mean, that was. I was hoping that would turn out to be a great episode for them, just because I know that I've had so many experiences.
Right.
We've all had experiences in that house, but it doesn't always translate to television.
Right.
So a lot of times when the TV shows come, they don't get everything that they're, you know, that would be indicative of what normally happens. But I think that they had some pretty good activity there, and it was completely different than. And I'm talking about Kindred Spirits. It was completely different than what we normally encounter there, because it was personally related to Sue.
Right. We talked a little bit about that the day after it aired, but we didn't get too much into it.
We did. I'd say I can't even remember when we were on TV.
Yes.
As you know, I've slept about a total of like 7 hours this entire week.
We did. We had talked about how we had experienced things that were different than what Chip had experienced.
Right.
So we did talk about that a little bit.
And then I know that you don't normally watch the paranormal shows.
I do not.
You do watch Haunted Towns.
I do, because I love you so much, Tim.
And it's not why. It's got nothing to do with me.
Really?
But
listen.
Did she have the membership card yet?
The what?
This is president of the fan club? No?
Will you stop it?
I'm just razzing you.
You're a terrible person.
So the
both of you.
Well, you should have known when you're like, John wants to know if he can come into the show tonight. You should have known what was going to happen.
You know what? It happens constantly. If it's not the two of you together, it's.
Well,
it always involves you. That's right. Okay. All right.
But so the episode of Haunted Towns that aired from the Lizzie Borden house and also the Abbey Grill, well, the church, that was, for me, it was very personal to work on that episode, because I wanted something. And Moniz, you've been there when we filmed this stuff at Lizzie Borden's. We tell them the stuff that goes on there. We tell them the experiences that we have, and they don't pay attention to it. You know,
you can do that till you're blue in the face. It's human nature.
We try and tell them, like, there's more to the story than just talking to Lizzie Borden. And, like, even if you talk to Lizzie Borden, it might not even be her that you're talking to. There's something else there. And so I was so happy that when we had these talks going into this episode, you know, basically saying, I know that you guys are getting into the Borden house and you're excited to try and reach into that mystery of what happened. But do yourselves a favor and don't worry about it. Don't bog yourself down and did Lizzie do it? I mean...
Yeah, I know.
We did Ghost Lab, where...
Which never really aired, but...
No, it aired. We just didn't make it.
Yeah.
But that was the whole idea of that episode, was that they were trying to look into different angles for it, and what ends up happening is they put Lizzie Borden back on trial. Like, it doesn't matter. At this point, it's gone way beyond whether or not Lizzie Borden actually did it. And so if you can just kind of put the whodunit aspect away from it and got to the, like, well, why did it happen? And what has happened as a result of it? That's when you start getting deeper into the story. So I was very glad that they did that.
That's why I kind of, like, as much as I don't know how I want to say this, but as much as I liked the way Ghost Adventures, when they started the show on the Lizzie Borden, where they talked about the history of the neighbor and what happened, I think that was a good way, because it still wasn't at first pushing down your throat, oh, who did it? You know,
but, I mean, and you can kind of fall into that trap if that's the evidence that you're getting.
Yes.
You know, if that's what they're talking about, I can understand going down that path. But to go into it and say, well, we're going to be the ones to prove what happened. Like, legal minds have not been able to do that.
And all you're
Paranormal
doing
investigators are not
is
going to do it.
Focusing on one thing. You need to open your mind and focus on other.
And so that's why I was just very glad. And I think it paid off, because I think they got better activity than the other shows have. And same thing with Kindred Spirits, because you were looking away from the murders themselves. And so you were getting some more stuff associated with it. And just a quick Haunted Towns plug, the season finale airs this Tuesday.
I can't believe it's so old.
I know, it went by quick.
They need a season 2.
And I agree. And if I was shaking a magic 8 ball right now, I hopefully would say all signs point to yes. But, you know, when we get the call, that's when it's official. But This
Can I shake her head and her head?
Stop
it's pretty
it.
much the same thing as a
That's
magic
how
8
that
ball. So the
Oh,
so it's the
God.
season finale, and it takes place in McDonough, Georgia. And a lot of people are saying, "What? You've been to Salem, Savannah, Fall River, Vicksburg? You know, you've been to places that I've heard of before. Cape May, New Jersey, Bisbee. You've been to places that are on the paranormal map. Where the hell is McDonough, Georgia?" And that's kind of the point. The idea of this show is to find some of those places where there's activity going on that you might not have heard of. And the only reason we know of McDonough, Georgia, and the stuff that goes on there is because our friend Jill lives there.
Right.
And Jill has been on the show before, and we've had her as a guest at events before, and she's the owner of Claire the Doll, and that doll is directly tied into, at least we believe it is, into the Camp Creek wreck of 1900, which has left its mark on that entire town, a train wreck
Yeah.
in which the town square was covered with the bodies of the victims. And that has kind of left its mark on this small town. And so that's what they'll be exploring in this episode, and Claire the Doll will be featured in the episode. So you've seen her first on Spooky South Coast. Now you'll see her on Haunted Towns this Tuesday.
I might have to skip that one because it's got a creepy doll in it.
Really?
Yep.
It's pretty good. I've seen the episode. You're going to want to watch it. It's pretty good.
No, I don't.
To
Why do I
quote
have
Larry
issues?
David, it's pretty good. That
You
starts
really do
tomorrow.
have issues. Aliens, you don't like. You don't like haunted dolls. What else?
Clowns.
Oh, clowns. Okay, so
Spiders.
Yeah, spiders and wasps, top of the list.
Wasps, I don't blame you for.
Thank you.
Wasps, 100%. If there was a show about wasps, I wouldn't watch it.
Perfect.
Hell no.
See that? See,
And I'm
not that
talking about
bad.
the bees, not
It's a
white
very short
Anglo-Saxon
list.
Protestants,
Stop it.
or the metal band. So the
We actually know people.
yeah, I was
in
gonna say,
the
like,
family.
if Sted Howland had a TV show, I'd watch that.
Yeah.
But and then of course there's another paranormal TV show on this week that the Spooky South Coast audience might want to tune into.
Yes, there is. Would you like to plug it this time since I did already?
No, this is your show to plug.
My show to plug. I will be back on Kindred Spirits this Friday, October 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern on TLC. So this will be episode 2 for me, but the first one of season 2, and I will be back sometime during the rest of the season.
I know that you filmed 2 episodes this season, and I know kind of what the gist was of why you were brought into both cases. Can you give us any kind of a preview of what you're doing in this one?
Let me see if I can give you something. This one was I got a call from Amy and Adam. This was the first episode that they filmed for season 2, and it was day 3 of production, and they called me and they said we need help, and basically I guess all
So
I can say,
you're coming to assist them.
I came to assist them
in
because
investigation.
they came in and the evidence that they were getting, Amy felt intuitively was not all that was there. So I came in and helped them out and basically validated what they were thinking. So it was a local case to me, or more local than the last one I filmed, but it was very interesting how it turned out.
Because I know, just like to put it generally, there was one that you were brought in to help with the case and one where you were brought in to help with a person.
Right.
So this is the one with the case.
Yes.
Okay. So tune into that Friday night, 9 o'clock, TLC. And then Haunted Towns, Tuesday night, 10 o'clock, Destination America. And if you've ever missed any episode of either show, they're all available on demand and on the apps. Both Destination America and TLC have what they call the Go apps, where you can watch the episodes right there. And of course, we don't push a lot of TV shows. We push these ones because they're quality. Like, I'm not talking about from even a paranormal perspective. Like, you can sit down and watch a show, one of these shows, and say, I just spent an hour watching something that was very entertaining.
Right.
And that's what I think there was such a movement with ghost hunters to say, let's kind of deconstruct the way that people think about ghost experiences and make it not so scary. There still was, of course, dramatic tension because it's television, but we're trying not to make it scary. We're trying to show that this is just something people do. And I think that now with shows like Kindred Spirits and Haunted Towns, to a degree, it's done it as well. We've kind of brought back some of that tension, that that little scary element. And Kindred Spirits has done a great job of this season, as they're saying. It's like each episode is like a little mini horror homage. So
it is, and I think the thing that both shows brought back, which was definitely missing, was the history aspect and the research aspect. And they're all like little mysteries to be solved. And that's the part that pulls me in, even if, I'm not into the whole, did you hear that? Let's, just straight investigating for an hour. I'm really drawn in by the history and the mystery of it.
And just in the final few minutes, we'll remind everybody that on October 14th, we'll have our annual Bridgewater Triangle investigation show. So if you're an investigator, if you're a team, if you want to get involved with that and you want to take part, reach out tim@spookysouthcoast.com or hit me up on Facebook or Twitter so that we can get everybody organized and figure out where we're going to send people out. Because I think we'll probably not be on the air next week because we got a lot of different stuff going on. We'll be on for that one. And then the following week, I won't be around because we have the Spooky in Salem event. And then we'll be on the week after that because that's the 28th. And then on November 4th, we'll be off because we have the Mysterious Middleborough event. So there's tickets for those available on SpookySouthCoast.com. The Middleborough event's going to be a blast.
I'll see you in November.
Because I know. The best thing about the Middleborough event is we get to work with all of our friends.
Right.
So with all the different locations that we'll be doing. All right, well, that about does it for this week's show. Again, we thank you all for tuning in, for listening. We had a great time. Hopefully you did as well. I can't believe I got to talk to the Amazing Kreskin tonight.
Awesome.
And so we'll be back soon, at some point, with more of Spooky South Coast. You can always listen to all the past episodes. They're all available for you wherever podcasts are found. And you can watch all the videos on YouTube. The easiest way to find it all, the simplest way, just download our free app. Doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't take up a lot of space on your phone. We don't send you nude pictures of Moniz unless you specifically request them.
No.
And then we ask you, like, how like sometimes it's like, are you sure you want to leave this site? Are you sure you want to? We ask them like 7 pop-up windows. Are you sure you want to see this? So by that point, it's on you if you still have clicked all the way through. So I'm just kidding. The app is rated for all ages. So we don't show any full frontal, just from behind. And
what is happening?
And I didn't even
It's
eat the Swedish fish.
No.
All right, I'm going to have to go get some sleep, I think.
I agree.
This is what happens. I get loopy and weird and goofy when I haven't slept for an entire week. But until next time, for Matt, for Stephanie, for Chris, for John, for Ashley, I'm Tim. We want you all out there to stay safe and stay spooktacular.